the water break, eh? Who would have thought you needed a water break at Kingspan Stadium when it's 7 degrees and lashing down with rain sideways? And the game was so stop-start, and the last thing the boys wanted was a water break to interrupt any flow that there was in the game. So, like Andy Friend, I completely agree with you. I like it's a different story if you're playing down in South Africa. It's 25 degrees. It's a real high tempo game. I think everybody will be in agreement that that's the right situation to have a water break. You even look at previous football World Cups, rugby World Cups. I believe there's a water break if the temperatures are ridiculously high. So yeah, I think it interrupts the game. I think Andy Friend probably wouldn't use that as an excuse for his team being 0 from 3. Absolutely not. But I completely agree with him. Going forward, we're coming into winter. The last thing we need is more and more stoppages, because the games are going to slow down when the weather gets bad. The ball and play time is going to come down significantly from what we've seen in the opening first 3 rounds. It's been helter skelter, throw it everywhere. I can't remember the last time I was down in Parky Scarlets and it was 17 degrees, 18 degrees, beautiful sunshine, not a breath of wind, and both teams able to play a really attractive brand of rugby. So, yeah, let's get away or do away with the water breaks. I think they've been trialed, and one thing that I really like about rugby is that the professional game is that they bring in a rule or 2 rules each season, and then they tweak them or do away with them. And I think it was a good idea to bring it in and trial it and test it and see how it goes. But I think we're all in agreement that it's certainly not needed here in the Irish coast, is it? I think it's obviously been a hugely difficult start for Connacht. 0 from 3, didn't fire a shot in Belfast round 1. Round 2 away from home, round 3, and obviously away from home, both games in South Africa. I think it's draw a line now and you start your season fresh on Friday night against Munster. And if there's ever a time to get Munster, I think it's now. Like, there's a new 4G pitch just been laid in Galway at the Sports Ground Stadium. It'll hopefully make for a better spectacle for the fans to come along and watch. There'll probably be mini rugby on before the game. There'll be fans allowed on the pitch after the game to run around and throw the ball around. Try and make it a bit more of a festival, carnival atmosphere on match nights. And that's exactly what you want. You want to be able to go for a few jars and watch your team and watch a good game of rugby. And I think that's what we're going to get on Friday night, is a good game of rugby. Munster's backs feel like they're against the wall. Like they had a good win against Zebre last week in Cork, but it feels like they're struggling. And there's a lot of negativity. Everybody thought when Johan van Graan was going to disappear at the end of last season, that things were going to change overnight, and they really haven't. And yes, there's huge amounts of time for Munster to turn around their season, but it was only last week it was Connacht and Munster sitting at the foot of the table without a win each. So yeah, I'm expecting a very physical encounter. I think Andy Friend will maybe say it is, lads, boys, the first 3 games we weren't good enough. We draw a line under it, and our season starts now, and we kick off that with a win at home against Munster, and we get our fans behind us, and we get a bit of that. I suppose in years gone by, Connacht were a team that just threw it around under Pat Lam, a real joy to watch, and ran it from their own 22 and didn't mind making mistakes. But the hardest games that I was ever involved with down in Galway were the ones where Connacht really rolled up their sleeves and got physically stuck into you. And I think that's what they need to get back to a little bit when they face Munster on Friday. And all the other stuff will come, because they're a talented side. They're a very skillful side. I know they're still missing 1 or 2 players, but this is going to be the game of the weekend. Jason Jenkins has obviously come up the road from Munster. Donny, it's a lot easier if you're, I reckon you could pull a player or 2 from AIL rugby and put them into that Leinster team, and they wouldn't look out of place. They'd be performing at a pretty high level because they've got such good pedigree alongside them. And I think Jason Jenkins, what he has added is bulk, size, weight, we haven't really seen his power yet, but that's going to come. But I think why he slotted in so seamlessly is because he's just got ridiculously good players alongside him. And that's a brilliant quality to have, and Leinster have that quality. So I've been impressed by him. I was impressed by Leinster in the opening 25, 30 minutes of the game against Ulster last weekend. However, they did get bullied in the second half. Like, Ulster kept it very, very tight, played the conditions really well. And if Aaron Sexton hadn't dropped that ball over the line, what might have happened? Could it have been a great comeback? And, I look through the game and you look at that Dan Sheehan line out, 5 yards out. They're 17-3 up. He goes to throw it in, skew line out, scrum, off the resulting scrum is a penalty. They kick it down the field. Then they win the ball in the line out, they kick it. Luke McGrath then knocks on. And before you know it, 3 minutes later, Ulster are in their 22 and they end up getting a try off the back of it. So, a couple of mistakes from Leinster that you do not expect and you don't see week in and week out. And, you've Gibson Park to come back in, James Lowe to come back in, Sexton to start a game. And I expect to see a couple of those lads playing against the Sharks, who narrowly defeated the Dragons last weekend, 20 points to 19. And it's great to see the bit of a resurgence from the Dragons once again in the URC. No, they didn't fold whatsoever. And they just couldn't get a foothold in the game. A couple of really basic errors, that quick throw in, which led to the Robbie Henshaw turnover, which then led to the try. And, they had Leinster had a lot of dominance in the set piece in the first half. And obviously that flipped on its head quite significantly in the second half. But, Ulster dug in. They really dug in. And like Rob Herring went off early with an injury. Ulster's back row, take Nick Timoney out of it. Like, they didn't really play that well. Billy Burns had a really quiet game. Big McCluskey was, who we've been ranting and raving about over the last couple of weeks. He was kept quiet. It wasn't a night for him. It just, there wasn't enough flow in the game for him and Luke Marshall to get into it. And, as much as Ulster tried their socks off, they just come up a little bit short. And Dan McFarlane said in his post-match interview that, Leinster were just a little bit better. And, on another night, it could have went their way and they might have, got away with one. But, for Leinster to go up to Belfast and get a win was sending a message home to Ulster, because, let's not forget Ulster beat Leinster home and away last season and done the double. So, Leinster are going to keep getting better. They have more and more players to bring back in, but, this Ulster side are sitting pretty in the table, and I fully expect them to get a 5-point bonus point, 5-point win, whatever you want to call it, against the Ospreys and rack up another hefty score. Everybody's looked at the Gallagher Premiership over the last, decade and, focused on how good a model it is. Each club is owned by, a different millionaire or billionaire who's come in and funding it, because, I don't think there's any club. I think maybe Exeter were the only club over the last 5 or 6 seasons that's, when I say made money, probably broken even. Every single other club is, hemorrhaging cash every single season. And unless it's a hobby for some very rich, wealthy businessman to go in and, throw a couple of million out every year, probably more, as we see at Worcester. But I have a really good friend, a guy called John Andres, who's an agent, Edge Rugby Management, and he has 5 Worcester players on his cards, and he also looks after Nick Easter, who just moved there this season. He's he's the forwards coach, or maybe defense coach. He's on the coaching ticket anyway. And that's 5 players and a coach. He is now trying to run around and I think a couple of players are hopefully going to have clubs, for this season, but there's other players that are, without a paycheck, or also owed money, have a wife and kids, have a mortgage to pay or rent to pay, have moved their wife and kids from, say, somebody like Rory Sutherland, who's moved from Edinburgh, everybody down to Worcester, gets settled, and the next thing he's, looking for a club. The Rugby World Cup is just around the corner. Somebody like him's off the back of a Lions series. And now my buddy John, is like he's looking after people's livelihoods. Like he's losing sleep at night, and it's all down to there doesn't seem to be any communication, does there, between the owners and the employees of the club. So it's really disappointing to see. I think Worcester now, with the stadium and everything they have, wow, like the facilities that they have, it's just a brilliant, really well supported team. And I think they're going to go under, and it's probably going to be one of those ones where they slip away down the leagues and until they can rebuild or get somebody to come in and throw a bit of cash at it and try and steady the ship. But very disheartening. And then when you hear about Wasps and potential other clubs that are financially stricken, and it's not a good look. So yeah, fingers crossed. The players, most importantly, and the staff. That can't be forgotten about. The admin, the selling season tickets. The SLC staff, everybody involved at Worcester Warriors. Get another job or are well looked after once this is all settled and people can move forward.